tougher than today.
All right. We'll begin with this. O beloved Lord, you offer us so much through this book. May our hearts rise to understand these precious words. May our minds be open to what is being said. And may you always be standing beside us, smiling, laughing, and when appropriate, weeping with us. We ask this in your beloved name. Om Amen. So, Haima, would you like to read Two in Love to Chat? We decided we would start with that again this week.
Sure, Brother Shankar, I will. It's page 293, everyone. Two in love to chat. His hands can shape through ours, and our sounds can somehow echo what God has never said. For the divine is really speechless. It is too in love to chat. The holy wind ruffled our hair and caused a lot of commotion. We think God made some rules, but how can that be true when our souls are really the governor of all? His mind can shape through ours. Our bodies and the earth are as clay. Is that not so, my dear? I have a lovely habit. At night in my prayers, I touch everyone I have seen that day. I shape my heart like theirs and theirs like mine. Beautiful. Two in love to chat. His hands can shape through ours, and our sounds can somehow echo what God has never said. For the divine is really speechless. It is too in love to chat. The holy wind ruffled our hair and caused a lot of commotion. We think God made some rules, but how can that be true when our souls are really the governor of all? His mind can shape through ours. Our bodies and the earth are as clay. Is that not so, my dear? I have a lovely habit. At night in my prayers, I touch everyone I have seen that day. I shape my heart like theirs and theirs like mine. Beautiful.
Anyone have anything to say about this remarkable poem?
I truly agree with her. God did not make rules. We really, the governor of all the rules. I think I agree with her on that, definitely. Truly.
Human beings, yes.
We make our own rules a lot of times.
And as was pointed out, those who try to have power over others manipulate the shadow that God casts and says that these are the rules that he made. And it's not so at all.
I think, in a deeper layer, this poem is quite Advaitic, because God doesn't make rules. We are the governors. So basically, we are, Tattvamasi kind of thing at a deeper level.
Tattvamasi means that thou art in Sanskrit. It's one of the four great sayings of the Upanishads. That's for Heidi, because Heidi certainly wouldn't have known what that meant immediately. My heart stops and feels like there's the need for great contemplation when she says that God is he's really speechless, too in love to chat. I feel the need to understand that more than at an intellectual level, because I think it's kind of the heart of the poem. And everything else that comes after that is a reflection of that love. You know, the shaping of everything as clay and no rules and this lovely habit that she has of touching everyone that she's encountered that day. Anything else anyone would like to say about this poem?
I have a little prayer I do before I get out of bed every morning, and it's kind of the reverse. I send love out and bless everyone that, I think everyone that I'm going to be in contact with that day.
What a beautiful thing to do, Heidi. Yes.
So when I read that, I'm like, that's kind of neat. She does it at the end of her day, which maybe I'll start doing that too.
I think that would serve us all well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I shape my heart like theirs and theirs like mine.
Yeah, this is just lovely though. I do too feel the need to just like kind of take that in.
Yes.
The title of the poem, Two in Love to Chat, just what can you say?
And well, as Meister Eckhart said, God's language is silence, and everything else is a bad translation.
And what is chatting? Chatting is a deep discussion. It's what we do to entertain ourselves or each other. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, but it is something we do to kind of just chatting rarely brings us deeper. It can lead to a connection that can do that, but so the divine is really speechless. It is too in love to chat.
Yes, I'm sure the word chat was very carefully chosen.
Yeah.
I guess that's why nobody gets realization while chatting with somebody else.
Yes. So Heidi, would you like to read the sky's sheets?
The sky's sheets. When he touches me, I clutch the sky's sheets. The way other lovers do, the earth's weave of clay. And any real ecstasy is a sign you are moving in the right direction. Don't let any prude tell you otherwise. The sky's sheets. When he touches me, I clutch the sky's sheets. The way other lovers do, the earth's weave of clay. Any real ecstasy is a sign you are moving in the right direction. Don't let any prude tell you otherwise.
I love the turn of phrase, the earth's weave of clay to
Yeah.
express our bodies. You know, when he touches me, I clutch the sky's sheets. The way other lovers do the earth's weave of clay. Anything else anyone would like to say about this? I also like the remark about prudes. All ecstasy is somewhere on the spectrum of divine ecstasy. As one of the great teachers of the Ramakrishna order once said, show me the line of demarcation where the world of matter ends and the world of spirit begins. There is no line of demarcation. So anything is actually an expression, any and everything is actually some expression of the divine, just somewhere on the spectrum between what we can immediately perceive as time, space, and causation and matter, and what is more like the experience of these saints, a transcendental experience.
So, how does one feel when one is ecstatic? What is ecstasy versus joy or
Well,
lot?
I think she means orgasm here. Well, I think that's exactly what she means when she says, the way other lovers do. And so then she says, any ecstasy is a sign you are moving in the right direction. Don't let any prude tell you otherwise. I think she's pointing directly at the orgasm of the lover, which is a form of ecstasy. It doesn't last very long, but
I don't think necessarily, I mean, she could be, we don't know, but
it's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, I know. I just I don't read it that way. I read it as she's comparing this ecstasy that she experiences with the divine to, physical, to orgasm, to physical love.
That's what I mean, yeah.
But she's not saying that's what she experienced, that it's the same thing.
Oh,
That's
no. That isn't what I meant.
okay.
If I spoke that way,
Yeah.
it was a misspeak. That isn't what I mean. No, her ecstasy when God touches her, as all the saints say, when they're touched by God, they lose all sense of their lower self. So that, I think, is my best approximation of ecstasy, Swayam, is losing your sense of self in those moments, losing all the aspects of your lower self. You're simply swept away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Could it be self-transcendence, Brother Shankara? Some type of transcendental experience?
Well,
Mystic.
That's what she's pointing to. Yeah, that's what it seems to me. Any, she doesn't say most, some.
Right.
Any
real bliss
is a sign you're moving in the right direction.
Swayam, before you even mentioned that, brought that question up about ecstasy, I had already, excuse me, I had looked up ecstasy versus bliss. And, of course, there are a lot of different quick definitions. But, the top one is ecstasy is intense pleasure while bliss is perfect happiness. That's the simplest one that popped up. There are others. But I've always personally, preferred bliss, or the concept of bliss, or the potential experience of bliss, to that of ecstasy, because ecstasy does sound like this sort of frenzied, intense thing that is going to rise and then it's going to fall. And bliss may come and go, but it's not a roller coaster.
Within the context of the Ramakrishna order, the word bliss is used. Ecstasy is very rare. And they talk about Sri Ramakrishna being in some kinds of ecstasy sometimes. But yeah, I understand and agree with what you said. Swayam, would you like to read Crazy?
Brother Shankara, today I'm attending from my cell phone, so I'm not sure how I can toggle back and forth, and I don't want to lose the connection.
Very good. Cindy, would you like to read it? Crazy?
Isn't that a song by Willie Nelson?
Yeah, sure is.
Crazy. From a distance, all want to enter his house. Once near, watch out for the guard dogs, both four-legged and two. Some of them are as crazy as hell. Crazy. From a distance, all want to enter his house. Once near, watch out for the guard dogs, both four-legged and two. Some of them are crazy as hell.
I just love this poem. It's her sense of humor popping out. But she means it very seriously too. Those people who think they have the patent on truth and reality and realization. If you come with any other perspective, look out.
So you're saying that's who the guard dogs are? The guard dogs are people waiting outside God's house who are they're crazy and they're trying to guard the truth, and because they think
their version of the
okay.
truth. Yeah. And it says both four-legged and two. Swami Vivekananda, our revered teacher that brought our teachings here to the United States, he refers to them as fanatics, these people. And he says there's nobody crazier, nobody who will do more bizarre and terrible things in the name of religion than fanatics. And certainly history bears that out. Anything else anyone wants to say about this little gem?
It is interesting at the first, from a distance, all want to enter his house. Because then when it goes on to talk about the guard dogs, it seems like that's almost a totally different track. Because when I read the first sentence, I thought, okay, from a distance, everybody wants to come to the party. But once they get closer, things change. Well, but then he introduces the crazy guard dogs as something to watch out for, and I'm not sure how those the first sentence and the rest of it relates.
Well, the only way I understand it is they're the ones who are guarding his house. From a distance, you don't really see them or sense who they are. This is just my understanding of it. But once you get close, then you encounter these guard dogs that have their idea of what his house is and who can enter there and what you have to be and do and say and think. And so I immediately related this to Swami Vivekananda's discussions about fanatics, the guard dogs of their particular brand of what they call religion.
Well, another way, I mean, I'm thinking is, you know, a lot of people, if not all, many people want to come close to God. But as we go on the path, all these obstructions that come in the way are attachments. Sometimes we don't even see them, the gross attachments we do, but the subtle attachments that we need to give up, we only see when we come closer. And those are like trying to stop us. And until we overcome them, we cannot enter the house of God.
Beautiful interpretation. Beautiful. That's yeah. So then we'd see her use of the terms four-legged and two is more metaphorical rather than specific.
Yeah, that's the way I kind of read this too, Swayam. It's like from a distance, it all looks so good, and the closer you get, maybe the more work you need to do. Not everyone wants to do that work. So, those could be the guard dogs. I don't know, but.
Well, see, this is why we have this discussion. There, as was said when we first began to study this book, there is no patent on the truth of this is the proper interpretation of this poem. Every one of us is going to receive it and understand it from where and who we are. And that's beautiful. That's exactly how it should be. It isn't, it's like Walt Whitman said, you're so proud at getting at the meaning of poems. Come on. These poems, mine or the others, they are the universe itself speaking to you. Hear it, hear the universe. Just stop picking apart the words. So
I'm feeling more as we talk about it. I'm feeling more like she's saying, you're all gung ho to go to God's house, but watch out for those guard dogs when you get there, because they might try to change your mind about coming.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you guys something, just because I read this poem and I was just so amazed at something I witnessed today. I have a really large cat you may have seen once or twice, Mozzie. He weighs about 19, 20 pounds. He's not fat. He's just big. He's tall, he's big. And he's been going out lately outside a little bit. And I had the door open so that I could see through the storm door, the glass door. And I heard a scuffly sound like a dog. And then I heard a dog barking, and I ran and I saw Mozzie all fluffed up like cats do. And here was this sizable dog that looked like a lab boxer mix. I don't think it had any pit, but it was a sizable dog. And I didn't know this dog. And I was scared because it was so close and it was like, and Mozzie was, and then all of a sudden Mozzie tore off after this dog. And I was, because usually dogs chase cats, but I mean, he was gonna tear into this dog, and the dog hightailed it into the street and just stopped. And it was like I could tell by the look on this dog's face that its whole world had been turned upside down. Like, what happened? That wasn't supposed to go that way.
Yeah. He was supposed to run and I was going to chase him.
And anyway, I'm concerned now about this.
Well, what is Mozzie's title?
He is security and crowd control.
Yeah, there you are. Mozzie Miowski, in charge of security and crowd control. That's right on Cindy's website.
It is. But
Not
it was
website,
always
Facebook.
kind of a joke. But it turns out that this dog is really a friendly dog, and I think now it just wants to be friends with Mozzie, but it's a little afraid of Mozzie. So anyway,
I would be too if I was a dog.
I made Mozzie come inside at that point. So
Mozzie is a big cat
he
with
is a big cat.
many defensive mechanisms.
Maybe
Clearly.
Mozzie is the guard cat. Guard
He
kitty,
is the
huh?
guard cat.
This fall, huh? the four-legged
There have
one.
been
The four-legged one.
there have been other instances that we've seen on the internet of this. There's a cat that chases a bear.
Bear, and
full-grown
another
bear.
where one chases an alligator back into the lake.
Yeah, right.
It's not a big cat either. It's a little old tabby, but it's not the size necessarily. It's that fearlessness.
Yeah.
That's some chutzpah for you, huh?
Okay. Haima, would you like to read Desire in Her Soul?
Sure, Brother Shankara. Yes. Desire in her soul. I wanted to hold him as an infant. What woman would not find that desire in her soul? Yes, I wanted to hold him when he was so in need that he might cling to me with all his strength for protection. I never thought of the sun as being maternal, but is there anything that does not nurse light? One day I was carrying my wash. One day I was carrying bread. One day I was carrying a small goat. And all of them became my Lord. I collapsed on the ground the first time this happened. The first time the universe suckled me. Desire in her soul. I wanted to hold him as an infant. What woman would not find that desire in her soul? Yes, I wanted to hold him when he was so in need that he might cling to me with all his strength for protection. I never thought of the sun as being maternal. But is there anything that does not nurse light? One day I was carrying my wash. One day I was carrying bread. One day I was carrying a small goat. And all of them became my Lord. I collapsed on the ground the first time this happened. The first time the universe suckled me.
This is one of these poems in this book that we
Yes.
in this tradition that we follow. There's this figure of Sri Ramakrishna, and this poem would have he would have gone into divine bliss when this poem was read in his presence. It would have just, it's called samadhi in Sanskrit. He would have gone into samadhi if this poem had been read to him. I don't think it would have gotten any further than I have never thought of the sun as being maternal, but is there anything that does not nurse light? I think that would have, it wouldn't have got any further than that. Anyway, that's what came to me when I
Yes.
read this poem, was that it really is a very high transcendental state that she got into when she was carrying the wash, carrying the bread, carrying the small goat.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
I sort of am having a little difficult time grasping that everything nurses the sun. I thought it was the other way around, that the sun sort of nourishes everything.
Well, that's what she means. We nurse from the sun. We take nourishment from
Okay.
the sun.
Mm.
I think that's what that means.
Okay.
I have never thought of the sun as being maternal. In other words, offering nourishment. But is there anything that does not nurse? We think of nursing as something that a child does from its mother's breast. So she's characterizing the sun, and she says, "I never thought of the sun as being maternal, but is there anything that does not nurse light?" And that's the pivot point of this poem. This nursing, taking from that which gives freely, because there's no charge for the sun. One of these poets points out in one of these poems. The sun just offers, as a mother does. And it is an unusual thought to think of the sun as maternal, and then that's the pivot point of the poem. At least that's how I hear it. Because then she goes on to a different kind of thought.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's just that the word nurse, I guess, could be active or passive, if I'm grammatically correct. So if she had used nurse from, it would have been more easy for me to understand that everybody nurses from the sun. When she said nurse, everything nurses the sun, I was like, okay.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
You saw it as a noun,
yeah,
as a nurse,
right.
rather than as a verb. That's no. I think it's in this context. For my reading, it's a verb. We nurse from that which is maternal. We take nourishment. We suckle from that which is maternal.
Is there any significance for those three specific things she mentions? Wash, goat, and the other thing I forgot.
Goat. Well, no, that's an interesting question.
Wash,
Was
bread, and goat.
Was bread. Wasn't it bread? Wash.
Yeah. Wash, bread, and goat. A small goat. In other words, either a young goat or one of those miniature goats. It was probably a small, not a miniature goat. I don't think they bred those in her day.
Everyday things.
Well, yes, I think, Heidi, you've hit a lick there. These are everyday things. These, She was carrying the wash, she was carrying bread, she was carrying a goat, just something that would be part of her everyday experience.
Maybe there's something deeper there, I don't know, but she wasn't on like a big pilgrimage just somewhere or something like that. It
No.
was just her normal, sound like, things she would do every day.
Yes, and she said, and all of them became my Lord. She saw the divine in all of these, as you pointed out, commonplace things. So I'm with Heidi on this, Swayam. I don't think there's any special significance to those three things beyond their
Okay.
just being commonplace, everyday things that she would do. One day I did this, one day I did that, one day. But it began to happen. As she said, I collapsed on the ground the first time this happened. The first time the universe suckled me. In other words, she radiated the knowledge of the divine everywhere, and the universe took from that. That's how I read it. It's just a okay. I would cease to be. God dissolved my mind, my separation. I cannot describe now my intimacy with Him. How dependent is your body's life on water and food and air. I said to God, I will always be unless you cease to be. And my beloved replied, and I would cease to be if you died. I would cease to be. God dissolved my mind, my separation. I cannot describe now my intimacy with Him. How dependent is your body's life on water and food and air? I said to God, I will always be unless you cease to be. And my beloved replied, and I would cease to be if you died. This is one of those poems that just describes the transcendental experience. She right away says, God dissolved my mind, that which produces the separation. And it's what all of the saints say. There is a saint in this tradition. His name is Adi Shankaracharya. And he says, my mind fell like a hailstone into the ocean of consciousness, and therein dissolved. He uses exactly the same word, dissolved. Anything?
So then what is the last sentence mean when God says that I would cease to be when you died? Because
if
this merging, if
if
you died.
well, all I can do is relate it to, or it isn't all I could do, but what happens is I relate it to that poem of Hafiz's, in which he says, God told him that each soul completes him. If you remember, God tells him that, and he says, how can a human being's worth be so much? And God replied, each soul completes me. So God would be incomplete in a sense. In a sense, no longer the same or dead, if you will. You know, I'm not sure I fully understand it either, Swayam, but I'm just saying that this is how I receive it. Thinking of that Hafiz poem. So how do you hear it? How is it that you see it?
I'm confused because if it's just the body that dies, and if the soul has merged, like she said, my mind, I forgot the exact first two lines, then how would God cease to exist if the merger happens? And the merger happens only when the body, I guess, or the body mind dies.
Perhaps, dear, I'll come to a greater understanding of it at some time as my mind is reaches the purification necessary to dissolve like that. But I've given my best thought about it. That's all I really can say. Does anyone else have anything to say? Does anyone else have any thoughts about this?
Yes, I see it as, in the beginning, she said, God dissolved my mind, my separation, because he dissolves into her mind, into him. She almost merged with God. That's what I understood.
That's what
And
she
then,
says. I can't describe my intimacy.
exactly, that's how close she is. She's almost dissolves with him. And then at the end, my beloved, and I would cease to be if you died. If you die, I am going to take you in. That's how I understood. God is promising her, you are going to be in me. Your spirit is going to be in me. That's how I understood, Brother Shankar.
Well, that's
Because
a very good way
she's,
to understand it.
she's such an illumined soul. She's so intimate with God, divine presence. That's how I got. Just I interpreted to myself.
Well,
That's
I like that very much.
I think just another way of saying what Haima just said is there is no separation. So whatever
exactly.
happens to the one will happen to the other. It's just,
Exactly.
and the
Very
language
nicely,
of the
That's,
poem is just to say that, to make
very
that.
nicely,
you
very
got it right.
That's
nicely put.
exactly what you were saying, I think, Haima.
Yes, Cindy, that's exactly. He's like, she and God are one, almost like we know we have divine presence in us, but she's already feels that she's merged into him.
Yeah.
And he's going to be there for her. She knows that. That's what he's promising to her. That's how I understood. You're right. You interpreted it right, Cindy.
Well, I think the two of you got it very well.
Yes, I agree. And now I'm content with the understanding.
Yeah, I like it too.
Takes a village to understand a poem sometimes.
Yeah, well, this is a
It sure
nice little
does.
village. And it's too bad the others aren't with us tonight because we read some beautiful stuff. And now that was the last of St. Teresa of Avila. And so now we're going on to St. John of the Cross. And Heidi, would you like to read? I think we won't have time for anything more than just reading the short biography of St. John of the Cross. Would you be so kind as to read that?
Sure. I
Then
can get
we'll read it again to start next week.
Okay, that sounds good. St. John of the Cross. My soul is a candle that burned away the veil. Only the glorious duties of light I now have. St. John of the Cross, 1542 through 1591.
So let's just see how old he was, 42 to 91.
51?
Yeah, well, 42 to to 92 would have been
91.
50. So he would have been 49.
Oh, 49. 42
Yeah.
to 91.
42 to 92 would be 50. So
Oh,
take
that's
one
right,
away
right,
from
right.
that. And
Okay.
it's he was just 49 years old when he left
Yeah.
the body.
I like to do that too. I just figured wrong. See how old they are. Okay, St. John of the Cross has long been recognized as one of the world's great mystical poets. His verse reveals a profound, tender experience of divine communion. St. John was born Juan de Yepes y Alvarez in Fontevores, Spain. I'm butchering that. A town northeast of Avila. Like St. Teresa, his family had been Jewish and were conversos, forced Christians. His father was from a wealthy silk merchant family that disowned him when he married a poor orphaned girl, probably of Moorish descent, from Toledo. St. John's father died when John was quite young, leaving a widow and 3 sons in deep poverty. His mother loomed, and John became a carpenter, painter, and tailor to help support the family. While in his teens, they moved to Medina del Campo, a larger and more prosperous city, where he worked for a while at a hospital. It was during this period that he received his first formal education as a Jesuit at a Jesuit school. He was an exceptional student, learned Latin well, and stayed in this school until the age of 21. Then, without much consultation with anyone, he became a Carmelite friar and subsequently spent 4 years at the University of Salamanca.
Yeah.
Salamanca. When St. John was 25 years old, a decisive event occurred in his life. He met St. Teresa and was remarkably affected, one could say transformed by her. She was in her 50s and emanated great spiritual power and insight. It is believed that they fell in love in the purest sense with each other. It is reported that she once remarked of St. John, "He was the most angelic human being I have ever encountered."
Now let's just stop right there. That if that is an accurate remark by her, for her to say that, that is really something. He is the most angelic human being I have ever encountered. That is about as good as it gets right there.
Yeah, and he was like 25 about when she said that. So he was rather young.
Yeah.
In 1568, John agreed to start the first Reformed monastery for Carmelite friars in a dilapidated farmhouse that Teresa had received from a benefactor. In 1572, he became the confessor for the nuns at the convent of the Incarnation in Avila, where Saint Teresa had been appointed prioress.
Mm-hmm.
In 1577, as a result of the attempted reform of the Carmelite order and his alliance with Saint Teresa, he was kidnapped and imprisoned at Toledo. It was during this period of debased confinement and torture by his fellow priests that he miraculously composed some of his greatest poetry. I need a drink. Excuse me. For much of the 9 months St. John was in prison, he was confined to a tiny cell, actually an unlit closet in which he could not even stand up. He was left to relieve himself on the floor of this tiny cell, and his few scraps of food and water were sometimes thrown into his feces and urine. Oh. On a regular basis, he was brought from his cell and beaten by some of the other priests to the extent that he became permanently crippled. He was not given a change of clothes or allowed to wash for months. He became infested with lice and developed acute dysentery. He was forced to sleep upon his own excrement. This prison was in the basement of a monastery. One night in prayer, asking God for the strength to endure his confinement and torture, St. John had this remarkable experience or vision. He heard a duet in which God and he were the singers. "I am dying of love, darling. What should I do?" And the beloved responded, "Then die, my sweetheart, just die. Die to all that is not us. What could be more beautiful?" The Prophet Muhammad once said, "Die before you die." And a contemporary religious figure, Meher Baba, once said, "Being is dying by loving." Both are speaking of an important transformative juncture through which we will all pass. "My soul is a candle that burned away the veil," says St. John, the veil being that which separates us from God. The veil being the false, the untruths we believe that we must someday die to before we are born. Following this vision, life changed remarkably for St. John for a while. He was given better care and even pen and paper by a new jailer, and during the next few weeks wrote down some 30 stanzas of Cantico the Spiritual and completed La Font and probably Noche Oscura, Black Night, which is really a love poem about transformation. On the eve of the Assumption of the Virgin, the head of the monastery pulled St. John from his tiny cell and hideously beat him, promising that he would be relieved if he would just abandon the reform movement. The night the Virgin appeared to St. John, filling his cell and heart with a divine comfort and saying, "My darling, I have accepted your surrender to all that has happened here, as you believed it was God's will. But now I command you to escape." And within a few days, he miraculously did escape. The most prolific period of his life followed his imprisonment. In solitude, surrounded by the clarity and beauty of the
Andalusian.
Andalusian landscape, he came to know days of heaven on earth. On December 14th, 1591, just before midnight, St. John, lying near death and remarkably weak, wanted to fix his bed as if someone important were coming to visit. He then asked that the Song of Songs be read. And while he was listening, suddenly he exclaimed, "So beautiful are the flowers," and died.
So, what a story, huh? What an absolutely incredible story.
It really is. Gosh.
9 months. There seems to be something very special about the number 9 and the number 9 months. Some sort of rebirth happening. Dying before you die, all those thoughts. So we'll read it again next week. And perhaps there will be more people with us that can hear it, and because it certainly does help us understand his poetry. His poetry is full of that passion, of the truly twice born. So anything else from anyone about this, or anything else that they'd like to talk about?
I see those two-legged crazy people at the monastery who punished him, but Brother Shankara, so cruelly tortured him. In the previous poems, we read about two-legged and four-legged crazy folks. I can see that right there in that monastery under the name of love and God. They tortured him so badly. Right?
But we'll read in St. John of the Cross.
Yes.
He has an experience of Christ saying about that experience of him being nearly beaten to death. Christ says, I cobbled their boots. And then Christ weeps. This is what I mean about the passion of St. John of the Cross. He does not blame them.
He never blamed.
He does not. As the Virgin said to him in that vision, I have accepted your surrender to all of this as the will of God.
Right.
And
That's
he
true.
later then has this vision that he says is more real than life itself.
Yeah.
We'll read the poem.
Sure. Thank you.
Which Christ says, I cobbled their boots. There's so much that we don't grasp about the nature of reality behind the screen of our awareness. And that, by the way, I'm not excluding myself from that. That means me too. And so that's why it's so, in my opinion, so auspicious for us to read these illumined beings. And so have this as part of our being, it becomes part of our being, so that when that time comes, that we do come to understand something truly wonderful happens. Illumination, they all talk of it. So, thank you all for being here this evening. We were a small group, but a happy company. It was sweet.
Yeah. It was good to be here. And June, I don't know what happened to her. I know last week her family was out of town and she was there by herself. So she said she tried to get on, but it's just.
Yeah, she can't see.
So as far as I know, I thought she was going to be here tonight, but I don't know.
Well, she's
in our
getting
heart.
along in years, and without help,
Yeah.
it isn't really possible for her to join us.
I don't think so either. So, but.
Okay, well.
And Shankara,
Lord,
I was just going to say is Wednesday a good day for me to bring that errand over to you?
Yes, absolutely, dear.
It'll be around 2-ish. Does that work?
2-ish is wonderful.
Okay, very good. That's all I wanted to say.
Funny, it doesn't look 2-ish.
2-ish.
Yeah, it's just a pun. So this little short poem, O Lord, take my hand. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. O Lord, fill this heart. O Lord, fill this heart. O Lord, fill this heart. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may. Om Amen. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji ki Jai. Durga Durga Durga. May we all be safe. May we all be healthy. May we all be cheerful. May we all have peace of mind. May we all go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the Lord. So until the next time we see one another, where we'll read again this absolutely overwhelming biography of St. John of the Cross. You know, you can't say that Ladinsky doesn't make it action-packed. So, anything else from anyone yet this evening? All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankar. Thanks, everybody.
We'll
Thank
sign.
you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night,
Well,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
all.
night.
This is
Good
always
night.
such a joy. Good
Yeah.
night, dears.
Good night.
Good night.